Hi, I'm James Kotecki, the host of the C-Space Studio here at CES 2020. Joining us is Laurel Rossi, co-founder, Creative Spirit. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Good
really
morning.
Appreciate it. First, can you just please define for everyone what Creative Spirit is?
Creative Spirit is a nonprofit organization that I helped start in 2017. We get jobs for individuals, young adults with intellectual, developmental, and learning disabilities, and they are unemployed around the world at a rate of about 85%.
So what kind of jobs, what kind of companies, how is that working?
Everyone who applies for a position at Creative Spirit is an incredibly able young adult. Sometimes they're looking for their first job, sometimes they've been through a lot of job interviews, and the roles that they apply for are the same as the general population by and large. When you have an intellectual or developmental or learning disability, generally speaking, you are quite able but need some accommodations at work.
Can you define some of those accommodations that people might be working with?
So we are placing lots of folks in tech QA positions, and some are coders, some are receptionists, really a wide spectrum of jobs. And some of the accommodations are as simple as tech accommodations around legibility. Some are just the type of working environment you're in, and some are having mentorship and coaching, something that we provide for them at Creative Spirit.
So tech, it sounds like, is one of the ways that accommodations are made, but it's not the only way.
It's not the only way. One of the things that tech has done in general is made employment incredibly possible. And in fact, tech has made a lot of things possible, even trickling back to education. The way we educate young adults with disabilities and the way we move them through the employment process is profoundly different today because everything's accessible to them. And so the tech factor is big, but also the human factor. I think that technology has made humanity quite transparent, right? What we need more transparent. And so when we couple the human aspect of coaching and mentorship with the technology, we have a 1-2 punch that's really, really powerful.
And how much of your job, your organization's role, is just telling people that all this is possible? I imagine you have a wide range of understanding of how much possibility there is in this space that you deal with.
It is amazing. Well, I'm a marketer. I work at Omnicom at Organic. And one of the things that I'm a lifelong marketer, and one of the things I know is representation is 99% of the game. And we do know that representation of those with these kinds of disabilities in particular, some of them not obvious, others are obvious, is really a big differentiator in terms of just getting people into roles. When we started, we got about 1,200 applicants the first hour we launched, and 50 companies have signed on. And just that kind of awareness, being a marketer, makes it a little bit easier to get the word out there. The companies have been fantastic.
So why did you start this organization?
A few years ago, a little before 2017, I was at an award show judging in our industry, and I was with a colleague from Droga 5 in Sydney, and he had hired one individual with Down syndrome. And he said that opportunity changed the culture of the company. And I have a daughter with a disability, so it was very close to my heart. And when I started to explore the options in the United States, I realized that there really was nothing like it, that this was a global problem that hadn't been tackled in the States, and that with a huge stage in the marketing and advertising industry, we had a great opportunity to really bring this whole issue to light.
On your website, I know there was language around, when I was looking at it, how having different voices actually boosts creativity. Can you share some examples about how that takes place?
Yeah. One of the things that has been really wonderful is having all different types of thinkers in the room in terms of problem solving. And so our employees who are placed in corporations, whether it's a tech company or an advertising agency or a telecommunications company, are all contributing at the same time to the dialogue. Sometimes it's specific around what it means to make the world more accessible, and sometimes it's not specific at all. It's just about being a different kind of thinker. It is unbelievably productive to have these kinds of thinkers in creative brainstorming sessions, as an example.
So it's not just on initiatives of accessibility, you're saying that folks are participating in. I know that there's tons of companies that you work with. Is there one moment of kind of aha that kind of stands out to you that you heard about recently?
One or two, yes. We had recruited a young man who had done an internship with us, and actually he had coded the Creative Spirit website, so I knew exactly what he was capable of.
And I've seen the website; it looks great.
Well, thank you. And we put him in a position at Verizon, and he was in the HR department and very excited about doing the kind of development work that he was doing. And after about 7 months, decided that he really wanted to do some AI work. And so with a little bit of coaching and a ton of advocacy, he got himself promoted, got himself an unbelievable new position. And I think those kinds of stories of ability and of self-advocacy are the ones we're looking to really prove to be true.
We're speaking with Laurel Rossi, the co-founder of Creative Spirit. So you're a marketer, as you said. What works better as a marketing message for encouraging companies to hire the folks that you're serving? Is it do the right thing, or is it do this thing, it's good for your business?
A couple things. One is I think all companies are really engaged today in being purpose-driven. Whether that's in service of their employees, it's in service of their customers, it's in service of their brand. I would encourage everybody to think deeply about how to really engage with all those populations, the caregivers in their own employee populations who are really struggling sometimes with people in their own families who have a disability. And I think that one of the things that we like to tell people is it drives business. We know the top 10% of companies, high-performing companies, are engaged in D&I activity.
Diversity and inclusion.
Diversity and inclusion. We know it can be a little bit circular at times. In terms of, is it the best performing companies who are really thinking about these things, or is it D&I that's making them high performing? We'd like to think it's the latter.
Are there ways that you are fearful or wary of technology locking out people with differences and disabilities? And are there concerns that you have there that you want to voice at a conference like CES?
Yeah, one of the things we really struggle with is when we want to do this at scale, and we are doing it in a very traditional way today, we want to use technology, and the bias in recruiting technology is so overwhelming that we are actually working on our own proprietary way of approaching the problem with technology today.
I'd love to hear more about that. So what's the challenge, and what are some of the solutions that you're looking at?
When our applicants actually apply through traditional technology systems, and most recruiting is done that way today, they are not the most likely candidates to be sought out or put through the process. And so what we're doing is working today with individual companies to improve that. But in general, we are working across the board to use tech to change the recruitment process and have our own technology solution.
Basically, there's a recruitment screen, or maybe certain algorithms have been coded in a certain way, certainly bias being coded in there, and they're just not able to get through the screen as easily.
That's correct.
Other obstacles that you see with companies as you put people to work in these companies, or maybe a way to reframe that question is best practices that you see from companies who are doing this well?
Yeah, two things. One is the thing we probably deal with the most often is I have a real need and a real desire to be a very inclusive company, but how does disability fit into that? And I'd like to think that we're getting to the point where technology has helped us universally design the world. And so whether I'm talking about people of color with a disability, people with a disability that are physical, et cetera, I'd like to think that inclusivity really does mean total inclusivity. And the one thing I've found is that disability inclusion among people with intellectual disabilities, just because they haven't been living their most productive lives, they're the most impoverished population on the planet, is a very telegraphic way to be totally inclusive.
And do you find that government and regulatory policies are also a factor in what you need to succeed, or are you kind of optimistic about the corporate world being able to push this a good chunk of the way?
There is a real reason why we've gone to the private sector for this. First of all, that's where the jobs are. Enterprises is where all the training exists. It's where the foundational money exists to be able to provide fair wage positions in integrated spots. The public sector is a little bit different in that there are a lot of incentives and disincentives to working. So if I get Social Security benefits, does it really pay for me to go out and get a fair wage position? We're sending a mixed signal to the population.
You talked earlier about brands wanting to have a purpose. What does that mean to you for a brand to have a purpose? And a question I've asked other people here in the C-Space studio is it different for a brand to have a purpose than a person to have a purpose?
I keep going back to technology. It's where my heart lives in this space because it's what's making the work that we're doing possible. Humanity being served through organizations is really the centerpiece of purpose, whether that's the employee population in these companies or it's the consumers at the other end of it. And I think the definition of purpose is, are we authentically serving as many people as possible?
So final question, we're here at CES and you talk about how technology is making a lot of this possible. Is there a technology that's not really in place yet, but you see on the horizon that you're excited about as a way of further enabling the people that you serve?
I think that it's starting to be in place. When I think about the connectivity of a family caregiver as an example, who is on their commute home, being a centerpiece of the family, needing to prepare dinner, needing to get homework done, needing to get all those things done, and the predictability because of IoT, among other things, and that connectivity, making it work.
The ability to know where people are and communicate with people.
Absolutely, is going to make the family unit more productive and also put caregivers in a much different place than they are today.
Well, Laurel Rossi of Creative Spirit, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm James Kotecki, your host here in the C-Space studio at CES 2020. Keep it right here because more great conversations are just ahead.